Welcome back to the Ark Survival Guide. Today we are going to give you a starting zone tour of the Crystal Isles, and we will show you every single starting zone on the Crystal Isles map. Now, when you first create a character on the Crystal Isles map, you have to choose one of these starting zones, and that's going to be a huge decision that'll make a great impact on the rest of your game. And without any information to choose the right starting zone for the Crystal Isles, your adventure could go very badly very quickly. So, this guide is going to show you every single starting zone and help you decide which biome you want to live in, and help you find a place to start that's going to match the difficulty level that you want for your adventure. Whether you want a really intense adventure where something's trying to kill you all the time, or if you just want to kick back and live the peaceful island life in a total beginner area, this guide will show you exactly where to go and where to start on the Crystal Isles. Now, if you're not a patient person and you just want me to tell you where to start, I would say the southwest zone is the easiest zone. Probably the southeast is going to be the second easiest and also a really beautiful and cool area to explore. But there will also be chapters in the progress bar of this video that will let you skip between any of the starting zones you're interested in checking out, and you can also find those links in the description of this video. Also, before we start our tour, we'll go through all the starting zones really fast just so you guys can know which biomes they are if you're in a hurry. But I highly recommend watching this entire video because it will be really helpful. You'll get to see some really cool scenery, and you can kind of get a feel for the entire Crystal Isles map before you get too deep into your adventure. And you might actually be surprised to see that you like some of the starting zones better than you expected. I certainly did. Now, do keep in mind there is a random element to which spot you pop up in each starting zone, and some of them have very different spots that you can show up. So just because I found a really peaceful place doesn't mean you're not going to get eaten the second you spawn in. But if that does happen, you can try to roll the dice again and see if you show up in the really nice location that you love. Also, as an added bonus, I'm going to show you guys some rare spawn locations, rare locations that you can spawn in. And actually, some of these starting zones have some absolutely amazing hidden spots where you can spawn in if you're patient. And I'm going to show you exactly how to do that, including how to spawn in on the floating islands and already start your adventures in the sky. Now, I learned this information after I'd recorded most of this guide, so I may be talking about some spawn locations that aren't as great, even though some of those zones actually have some really awesome places you can spawn in if you're really lucky. So I hope you can forgive me on that. All of the Crystal Isles map information is brand new, and I'm still learning a lot about this map myself. Hopefully you'll enjoy learning how to spawn into the jungle, the floating islands, and Eldritch Isle, which is the crazy lightning snow biome. So be sure to watch this whole video till the end because there's some great bonus info you're gonna love. Speaking of which, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe to this channel because we have lots of helpful Crystal Isles guides coming your way, and you're not going to want to miss any of that great content. So without further ado, let's get started. So we'll give you a full tour of each of the starting zones on the Crystal Isles map, but first we're just going to go through the list of the spawn regions so you can get an idea of what's there. Now, the northwest region is the Redwood Forest. It's a very high difficulty place to start, but if you're into the challenge and you like the redwoods, it's a beautiful redwood forest biome. The north region is actually extremely dangerous. You're going to be freezing to death the moment you spawn in, and it will really be a toss-up whether you get eaten or you freeze first. But the north zone is for those who are looking for the most challenging Crystal Isles experience. The northeast zone is actually a really cool cherry blossom forest, which is still pretty cold. It's about a medium difficulty area, but there are some breathtaking views and really cool spots to live up here. Now, the western zone is pretty crazy. A lot of big dinos living out there. You might actually run into a titanosaur in that area, and there's not a lot of trees to start with, so that's more of a mid to high level area. And then the central zone is actually very similar to the west. It's just a little safer, a little easier, a little bit more mountainous, and you've got a bit more trees and resources, so that's probably about a mid-level starting zone. The East Zone is a beautiful volcanic forest that's very new to the Crystal Isles map, and it does have that volcano in the middle, but parts of the East Zone will be relatively easy and parts will be extremely dangerous, so I would say it's about a mid to high difficulty level in the East starting zone, and this is probably the closest starting zone to the floating islands, so if you want to head up to the floating islands, this might be your best bet, but you'll be running through some really dangerous stuff. Now, the southwest starting zone in the Crystal Isles map is the Tropical Paradise. It's very safe. It's definitely a beginner level. It's the easiest starting zone in the whole map. And I actually have an entire guide on why I love that starting zone and why that's your best bet if you want a really easy start to your Crystal Isles adventure. So check out the link in the description or the card on the top right of the screen, and you can watch that entire guide on the best starting zone for the Crystal Isles map. Now, the south zone is the desert, which is usually extremely dangerous with hardly any water, and it's usually a struggle just to survive the heat and the dehydration. But when I spawned in, I actually popped up next to a really cool swamp. There's actually some nice oases in the desert here, and a lot of cool stuff. So that's actually probably about a mid-level difficulty for a lot of the starting locations. So definitely something cool to check out if you're into that kind of thing. And finally, the southeast starting zone is probably my favorite starting zone in the Crystal Isles map if you want a slightly challenging but still relatively low difficulty area. It's kind of like a jungly forest with a lot of really cool trees and nice canopy walkways all up into the sky. So it's actually got some really interesting stuff, and it's going to be very fun to explore. It's a very beautiful biome, so if you want a relatively easy but not the easiest experience starting on the Crystal Isles map, this may be a really great choice for you to start in the southeast zone. So now that you have a general overview of all the starting zones in the Crystal Isles map, let's talk about each one and let you guys really see what they're like. And feel free to use the progress bar in the bottom of the video to skip straight to the starting zones you're most interested in. Now, our first starting zone is the northwest, which is going to put us right into the middle of the Redwood Forest. Now, I never recommend starting in the Redwood Forest, and actually I recommend avoiding the Redwoods altogether because they are crazy dangerous, and it's really a much better idea to get yourself established, get some good gear and dinos before you come into the Redwoods. But look how beautiful this is. It looks way cooler at night, actually, but we're going to go ahead and change it to daytime so we can see better. And here's the map and GPS coordinates where we spawned in into the Redwoods. Now, the good news is we are right next to a ton of metal and crystal right as soon as we spawned in. So that's actually a big plus to spawning into the Redwoods, right? The bad news is right over here, and it's coming our way right now. So we've already got a whole pack of terror birds, and we'd be pretty much dead within the first 2 seconds. So if we run in this direction, we'll run right into a Carnotaur. So, I mean, you can see why these Gallimimus are all running, right? I'd be running too. So that is basically what it's going to be like if you spawn into the Redwoods. Now, we happen to show up on the edge of the Redwoods, and we're actually right next to this big clear plains area. And there's some pretty cool spots, some pretty nice base locations out there, very big plateaus you can live in. But as you can see, even if you stay on the edge of the Redwoods, there's still a lot of dangerous stuff that's just going to come by and eat you pretty quickly. So I highly recommend not spawning into this first starting zone. But I will show you real quick, this is a pretty cool base location if you're playing PvE and you want a nice little plateau to spread out on. It's actually got a well up there, but you know, you got to run past a Carno on the way up, and then there's a T-Rex on top, so you got to deal with nasty neighbors if you want to live up here. So my advice with the northwest starting zone is don't spawn here unless you want an extreme challenge and you don't mind dying quite a lot. Now, if you want an extreme challenge in the Crystal Isles map, the North Zone is going to be crazy dangerous and crazy difficult. I highly recommend not spawning here with your starting zone, but if you want to spawn here, you're going to be freezing immediately, even in the middle of the day. It's super cold. Of course, we're standing in the water too, which doesn't help, but here's where we spawned in the North Zone, and there's an amazing snow mountain up there where you can build a really epic alpha base inside a cool cave. But other than that, you're probably not going to make it very long at all. You're already freezing to death. We've got a whole pack of Allosaurs just waiting to eat us. Plenty of Argentavis. That cool little island there will keep you somewhat safe from some of the predators, but it's covered in Argents. So, I mean, I don't really see a great option for you out here unless you are just a pro Arc player and you want a serious challenge. So we're not going to spend much time here at all because my recommendation is don't spawn in the North Zone. Now our next starting zone on the Crystal Isles map is the Northeast Zone, and this is actually a cool zone to start in if you want a medium level challenge. It's about medium difficulty, still pretty dangerous place to start, but it is a beautiful area. Now this is the Cherry Blossom Forest. Everything is pink everywhere, and there is a lot of dangerous stuff out here, and it's still pretty cold too, so you will have to deal with the cold, especially at night. But it is a really beautiful place to live, and we'll show you around a little bit here. Here we are on the map, and there's the GPS coordinates. Once again, if you want an easy time playing, I would not recommend starting out here because there is quite a lot of stuff that'll come eat you pretty quickly, and lots of saber-tooths just prowling around even the starting area. But it is a beautiful, beautiful place, and it's just pretty awesome. Right down here, actually, we've got this lake, and in the middle of the lake is the best place to get oil that I think I've ever seen in Ark. See all those big black boulders? Those are all just massive oil nodes. So if you build a little outpost out here, this is actually a great place to get the gasoline you need for a Tropio. Now on my right hand side, there was actually a bunch of beavers and beaver dams, and this little stream right here is a great place to pick up beavers. So that's actually really good for beginners. You can get beavers and basically unlimited wood to level up really quickly. If you grab one of these beavers right here on my left, you can see the beaver dam right there. There's also cattails around this stream, which is a great way to get plant species X turrets and defend yourself once you've got large crop plots. And this is a really nice area, but right up here, there's actually a cool lake, and it's one of the most beautiful places to live. Of course, you're going to have a really difficult time actually getting there. Oh, yeah, over here we've got the volcanic forest out here, and then way off in the distance is the floating islands. So this is kind of a decent alternative if you want to live close to the floating islands. Start out, get yourself established to where you can actually get one of these pteranodons and fly out to the floating islands, because there's not actually a place that starts in the floating islands. But this is actually a really cool spot right here. This lake is absolutely full of silica pearls. You can get ridiculous amounts of pearls here. Yeah, there you can see them right there. And there's actually otters that spawn a lot in this lake. And then there's all this metal up here, which is going to be very difficult to get to. There's actually a couple cool little nooks and crannies inside the waterfalls here, and you can squeeze in a tiny little base back in here too, like maybe 4 foundations, but still, it's a pretty cool spot, and if you don't mind having a pretty good challenge, this is actually a pretty fun place to start. So there's the GPS coordinates of this area right here if you decide you want to live here. So the Northeast is actually not a bad starting zone. Now this next starting zone in the Crystal Isles is the West Zone, and I don't really recommend starting here either, and you'll see why in a second. Let's just call this the Wild West. It is a huge open grassland, which actually has some pretty cool plateaus. It's a, pretty nice temperature out here. It's a kind of cool place to start, but it is really dangerous out here. Now, when I call it the Wild West, this is why. You're pretty much going to have people coming and saying hi to welcome you to the neighborhood pretty quickly. Also, somehow that thing just punted me way off a cliff. That was pretty cool, right? So this plateau that I spawned on is actually a pretty cool spot. It's very flat, doesn't have a lot of ways up. I'm actually not 100% sure it has any ramp leading up here. Maybe right there. But the western zone is mostly just a very open plain. There's not a lot of trees, so you're going to have a hard time getting all the wood you need to level up quickly on the earlier levels. So once again, I would highly recommend starting someplace nearby that's a little bit safer and then heading over here when you get to a slightly higher level. You might even be able to grab a couple raptors, get yourself a few levels, and start building up here if you like this area. Now we're actually really close to the jungle. This might be one of the closer areas to start if you want to head straight for the jungles. Strangely enough, there don't seem to be any starting zones in the jungle or in the floating islands, but this is actually kind of a cool spot. You could block off one ramp and have a pretty good PvE base. But we've got the jungles over here and some swamps in this area, really close by to that starting zone. So, if you want to start here and head somewhere else, that's not a bad idea. But as far as making the West Zone your starting area where you're going to live and level up, I really don't recommend it, mostly because of the scarcity of wood. But it definitely has some majestic rolling hills and great plateaus to build on. Now, the next starting zone in the Crystal Isles is the Central Zone, and we're not going to spend very much time on this one because it's almost the same as the West Zone. Like, I could probably see in the distance where we spawn on the Western starting zone from right here. Now, it's got a much better view. It's much more hilly, more mountainous, and up here, instead of having a Carno run up and punt us to welcome us from the spawning in, we've actually just got a nice little Pteranodon. Not as much dangerous stuff up here. Got some decent lower level dinos, and it's actually a lot more hilly, so there's a lot of places you could set up a base and have it be a much safer area. And there's actually some decent forests nearby too, so at least you've got much better options for trees out here. But you know, you still have to deal with Carnos and probably some Rexes running around, so you get some of the good things about having the Western Zone, but not as many of the bad things. Also, check this out. I really like this forest here with these white trees and the flowers. Very cool touch. So anyway, a lot of cool spots. You can actually make some decent bases here. So I'd say this is about a medium level difficulty, and you know, a decent place to start, especially if you want to go across the river into the jungle and swamps there. But overall, it's a pretty decent place to start, and it's pretty similar to the Highlands on Ragnarok. So our next starting zone on the Crystal Isles is the East Zone, and a lot of people are probably going to really like this zone because it's really cool. This is the Ember Forest, which is all autumn red colors, very cool looking. Everything is kind of charred and looks like it's actually somewhat on fire still, and a lot of this area is actually really dangerous. Now, I happen to spawn into a pretty safe spot right here, but it's totally random where you spawn in, and in my other time I tried spawning in on this area, I wound up much further north, closer to the floating islands. Now, this may actually be your best bet if you want to spawn in near the floating islands and then run in that direction, but it's pretty dangerous, and I happen to be right on the edge of the Ember Forest, right next to some of the other zones. We're actually very, very close to the southeast starting zone, but it's a little bit more dangerous in most of these areas. Now, we've got some pretty cool stuff nearby on the edge of this forest, and I'll go over some of that a little bit more in depth, but this spot right here between these hills, it's kind of hard to get up into there, but it's actually got some of the best metal deposits in the entire island. So right down here in this cave is actually just wall-to-wall metal nodes. You can't really see them very well, but this is actually one of the few caves that has just one entrance on either side. I don't know if you can get back out once you get down in here without a flyer, but it is just solid metal deposits and lots of obsidian too. So if you're looking for a good metal base, this is actually one of the best places in the entire Crystal Isles map to go to check that out. So this actually gets you right next to that metal, so that by the time you're ready to start harvesting metal, you can just have a crazy good metal outpost. But once again, you know, I don't necessarily recommend starting out in some of the more dangerous areas, but if you're into that kind of thing, this is actually not a bad spot. So here's the actual GPS coordinates of that metal cave, and I will go ahead and show you that. Now, this spot where we ended up spawning in was actually pretty lucky because you can get some really bad spawn locations in the eastern side, but check this out. We've actually got a lot of metal and some obsidian right down here, and I'll show you the coordinates of that in a second, but there's actually lots of obsidian around the walls of this valley, and here we are right on the southwestern side of the Ember Forest. So if you're looking for easy, safe obsidian, I didn't really see anything dangerous right around here, and there's actually quite a few little obsidian nodes kind of scattered around these mountains. Now, there's actually some cooler areas up into the mountains here, and we're actually on the seat of the volcano, so it's pretty cool up here. Yep, there you go. You've actually got some nice ledges you can live on, but once again, there's a lot of dangerous stuff just waiting to eat you out here, so you're going to have a rough time in most of these areas, and there's a red obelisk over there. Now, there are some cool spots. There's like a really nice plateau you can live on. I think it's further up here to the right. Yeah, there it is. It's actually got a cool waterfall. This is one of my top base locations, but you've got to go through a lot of nasty stuff to get over here. So here's the coordinates of this. It's one of the safer safer areas in the Ember Forest. You've got lots of water, lots of good resources, and if you can make it to this spot, this is actually not a bad place to live. There's actually only one ramp that goes up to this plateau, so it's easy to safeguard yourself up here, and it seems pretty safe on the plateau, but getting here is probably going to take a lot of running and dying. But it's not terribly far from the floating islands, so this might be a decent alternative. If you want something new at about a medium level difficulty, try spawning in the east starting zone. But just remember, every time you do a random respawn in the eastern starting zone, you are rolling the dice, and if you get unlucky, you might be getting eaten by several saber-toothed tigers and scorpions all at the same time the second you spawn in. So, this can definitely happen too, and be very careful of these swampy areas. Now, the next zone in our starting zone tour of the Crystal Isles is the Southwest Zone, and I highly recommend starting in the Southwest Zone. If you're lucky, you'll end up in this southern island down here, and it's actually a really great place to live. Now, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this guide telling you all about the best starting zone on the Crystal Isles map because I have an entire guide about just that, and that will actually go over the entire Southwest starting zone, show you some really good starting base locations in the Crystal Isles, and give you some really good advice and pointers that's going to really help you get the best, easiest start on your Crystal Isles map adventures. So I'm going to put a link in the description to that guide, and hopefully on the top right of the screen you'll see a little icon, and you can click that to watch that entire guide on the best starting zone on the Crystal Isles map. But for now, I'll give you just a really quick overview of why this zone is so amazing. Now, most of the time when you're playing Ark, you start on the beach and you stay there for a little while until you've built up your strength and you're ready to go and face the more dangerous areas further inland. Now, the entire southwest zone is just all beach. It's mostly pretty flat, relatively safe. Right here we got lucky and we spawned right next to a ton of crystal and metal deposits, all the stone we could possibly need, all the wood we need, and basically we could just set up a nice little thatch hut out here and live happily until we're like level 30 or 40 and do just fine. There's very few dangerous things out in this area, and even these huge wyverns are totally neutral. If you attack them, they'll kick your butt, sure, but they will leave you alone otherwise. So this is actually a really cool place to live, and most of it's pretty flat. Most of these areas you're just going to be running into Dilophosaurs and the occasional raptors, but in general it's relatively safe. And some of the more northern areas you're going to run into baryonyx and get quite a lot of sharks in the oceans. You'll run into some sarcos in and out, but most of the time, if you live relatively close to the center of one of these little islands, you're barely going to be bothered by anything dangerous. Now, as we keep going north a little bit further, there's a lot of little island chains up here, and there's even more metal up here, and I'll show you the coordinates of that too. But as you can see, we're still mostly just running into parasaurs, turtles, and little things that won't really give you very much trouble at all. And as you get further to the north, we're going to run into some swampy areas, and actually out in the distance there you can see a big mountain, and that's one of the best places to start your adventure on the Crystal Isles. It's a really safe plateau, and if you can get yourself up there, which you're probably going to die a lot getting there, then you've got basically a really amazing alpha-sized base where you can just live very happily for a long time. There's also a lot of Tropiognathus spawns around here. Oh, and there's some more metal, lots of metal, so there's lots of really easy, safe metal deposits out here, and you can even just park a raft out here if you can avoid the whales. There's lots of whales, but you can very easily get a nice metal smithy location out here and just get all the materials you need without being bothered by anything very dangerous. Now, this huge mountain is covered in really flat plateaus with lots of great resources, including water, which is really helpful, and lots of metal, crystal, all the trees and rocks you'll need, and just about everything up there is pretty passive and safe. The only things I've run into up there are just Dilophosaurs. Getting up to that mountain is very difficult, but I've got an entire guide which will teach you how how to make stairs or ladders to pretty quickly get up to the top without having to go through any dangerous areas. And that will let you avoid all the Spinos, crocodiles, and baryonyx that just run around all at the base of this whole mountain. But from this spot, it's totally safe, and you can have a really nice start to your Crystal Isles adventures. And if you spawn in the southwest zone and just stay on the southwest side of the map, you'll have a really easy start. Then you can start slowly exploring into the swampy areas, get into the jungles, and take on your adventure when you're really ready for it. But you can basically level up far enough to get yourself a flyer and tame a pteranodon right up on this mountain, and you never have to come down this mountain until you're ready to fly across the entire Crystal Isles map. So that's really my recommendation if you want a really easy start to your Crystal Isles adventures, is just spawn into the southwest starting zone, embrace the quiet island life, and then you can go out and find some danger when you're ready, but it won't come looking for you all the time. Now, I'll admit, with this next starting zone, I was very surprised. This is the south starting zone in the Crystal Isles map, and when I went to put together a Crystal Isles starting zone guide, I was thinking, okay, this is the desert, this is going to be terrible, right? Well, check this out. This is actually really beautiful, and usually I hate the desert because there's no water, but we're actually spawning right next to the water, right next to the swamp, really. Now, this is an interesting spot because we're right on the corner of the desert, the Ember Forest, and the Green Vale, so we've got a lot of biomes right next to each other, but we've got tons of water, trees, and all kinds of good stuff, and nothing seems to be killing us right away, which is pretty cool. There's also some really nice plateaus right next to us, and back in the background on the other side, you can kind of see there's the desert, there's the Green Vale, and to our right is actually that place we first spawned on the east starting zone where the Ember Forest was. So this is actually pretty cool. We're right below the red obelisk, and this plateau is actually a very flat plateau. I don't see a lot of ways up or down, so this might actually be a pretty safe, cool spot to start out your adventures. Then when you're ready, you can venture down into the desert and find some of the other cool areas back here. But there's a lot of cool plateaus that are very flat out in the desert. It's kind of almost like a Australian outback theme back here. It's not quite as deserty as the desert itself. But we got some good metal nodes up here, pretty safe area on this particular plateau. Probably take you some time to get up here, but aside from some saber-toothed tigers, which are no joke, it's really not as dangerous as I expected. Also, if you look around the map, there's actually lots of water around this desert, lots of trees, and so it's actually kind of got the best of both worlds. You get all the good things about a desert without having it be quite as deadly, and you can always venture further south into the really nasty parts of the desert where there's really no water, but there's actually a lot of cool stuff to explore out here. So this may actually not be a bad starting zone if you try out the south starting zone on the Crystal Isles. But once again, you're rolling the dice and you may spawn into a total desert where you've got no water, and you might spawn right next to an oasis. So, if you spawn into a bad spot, you could just go punch something dangerous, let it kill you, and try again until you get a really nice starting location. Now, the last starting zone on the Crystal Isles map list is the Southeast Zone, and I could really say they saved the best for last. Honestly, my favorite three starting zones are going to be the last three, and this is actually a really cool new biome with the Crystal Isles map. Now, this is the Green Vale, which is just a really cool forest. We're actually very close to the red obelisk. You can see it in the distance through the trees, and here we are, we're right on the southern edge of the Ember Forest, right on the eastern edge of the Green Vale, and actually right next to the desert. So all of our last starting zones have been pretty close to each other, but this is a really cool forest. Now, there are a lot of trees, it's really hard to see, and there are some raptors running around out here, so that's actually pretty dangerous for starting players, but this particular spot doesn't seem to have as much dangerous stuff. And you can push forward a little bit until you find a little bit more space between the trees so you can see better. But check out this biome. This is just a really, really cool area. It's almost like a jungly forest. It's kind of got an aberration and mushroom feel to it. And there's a lot of flat plateaus where you can get up on a ledge and be very safe in your starting base. So a lot of these places you'll only need to make like one or two good sized walls, and then you can have the entire safe plateau totally walled off for you and have some pretty good places to live. It's also just down the river from the floating islands, so this might not be a bad spot if you want to just build a raft, sail down the river, and try to get out to the floating islands quickly. Once you hit level 16, you unlock the raft and you can head on down. So definitely worth a try if you're looking to go in that direction. But one of the things I really love about this whole forest is it has this canopy, and there's all of these places where the roots just go up into the trees, and you can actually find base locations that are way up in the treetops, which is actually pretty fun. But most of these areas I'm seeing largely parasaurs, trikes, and not super dangerous stuff even around this spot. So there's some cool spots right here. You can actually just wall off one section of this little plateau, and you've got a very safe plateau. You got water right below you. You could build some pipes and get some water flowing. So I'll show you the location of this too. But there's just a lot of places I'm finding that have some really good areas. You could use the terrain to your advantage and make yourself pretty safe just by going up into the trees or going up on a plateau. So there are going to be a lot of things hunting you down in this forest. There's some raptors right here, of course, but, it's going to be a really fun experience. I'd say this is probably going to be lower difficulty than most of the places I've seen. Most of the starting zones are a lot more challenging. And the southeast zone is just going to be a really cool experience. Like, there's never been a forest quite like this in Ark, so I'm actually really looking forward to living here. I'll probably still start in the southwest zone just to have the really easy start to at least get myself, a raft, get some decent tames. But I might actually move over here pretty quickly from that southwest zone and check out the southeast, because this is just such a cool forest and it's so much fun. You'll still have a really easy time leveling up extremely quickly because it's just covered in trees, stone, thatch, all the good stuff you need in the early levels. You may have to do some exploring to find metal and obsidian and all that stuff, but for a starting zone it's actually extremely good, and if you want a slightly difficult but mostly pretty easy starting experience that's very different and just really beautiful, then this is definitely going to be the starting zone for you. So after I'd recorded most of these videos, I found out there are actually some very rare spawn zone locations where you can actually spawn in and get to some awesome places. So I'm actually going to show you guys how to spawn into the floating islands in the sky at the very beginning of your adventure. Now there's a lot of ways to get to those, but they're going to involve lots of death, and it's going to take you a while to even get to the point where you can get up there. But if you do this, you'll be able to spawn right in the sky and start your adventure right there, which is pretty cool. It will take some patience though. Now, in all of the spawn zones, as you can see here on this map, there are lots of different locations where you can appear. Each of these dots is a place you can appear when you spawn in. And I found out this info after I recorded most of this guide, so sorry about that, guys, but all of this info is brand new and it's coming out every single day. So I'm trying to keep on top of all the news about Crystal Isles map, all the new discoveries, and share it all with you guys as fast as possible. So if you want to spawn into the Crystal Isles floating islands, as soon as you start your adventure, you're going to have to go to the East Zone, which is mostly this crazy ember forest. Usually you're going to land somewhere out here in the forest around the volcano. It is a crazy, unforgiving zone, and you're probably going to die a lot, but that's actually kind of helpful because we are going to be spawning in, killing ourselves, and then spawning again. And honestly, it took me like 20 times to get this to work, but I promise it works on PC, and it definitely is worth the trouble. So there's about 20 different locations you can actually spawn in the Eastern Zone, and one of those locations is actually in the main floating island. As you can see here, it is a really cool spot. It is definitely worth the trouble. So if you spawn in, run up, punch something dangerous, let it kill you if you're not in the sky, and you'll know that pretty quickly because the trees are all orange and red everywhere if you're not in the right place. But if you're actually up in the sky, you can look around, you'll definitely know you're there, then you're in the right spot. So it's actually a lot faster to jump off cliffs if you've got any cliffs handy. There's plenty of lava to stand in, but you're basically just going to be spawning in the east zone. If you're not in the right spot, kill yourself, spawn again, and since you're just starting your adventure, you're not going to lose anything. Now, once you do finally spawn into the sky, I highly recommend getting a sleeping bag as fast as possible and get that down, because if you die up here, and there are lots of Argent Avis that are going to come and hunt you, then you got to start this whole process over again, and you might have to die 20 more times to get up here. But once you've got yourself a nice little base and a bed up here, you can stay very happily in the sky for your entire Ark adventure on the Crystal Isles. So this is a pretty awesome little trick that you can do, and I just found out about this, and I hope it helps you. Another cool place you can spawn is actually in the jungle if you're using the Western Zone. Most of the Western Zone is just this open prairie where it's just a lot of really big, dangerous dinos, but if you spawn over and over again, you're eventually going to come up in the jungle, up in the canopy, which is actually a relatively safe area at certain places. But that's another one that might be worth spawning over and over again if you want to get up into the jungle. It's very hard to get there on foot from the other spots in the Western Zone. And if you want an extreme challenge and it's not bad enough to be spawning into the Arctic zone, Eldritch Isle is an Arctic zone full of lightning, crazy element crystals everywhere to harvest. Basically everything's trying to kill you all the time. It's probably going to be the highest challenge level in this entire Crystal Isles map, and you've got about a 1 in 5 chance of spawning in there if you go ahead and spawn into the northeast zone, and you just kill yourself a few times, you'll probably end up somewhere on Eldritch Isle. Now keep in mind, a 1 in 20 chance doesn't necessarily mean you're going to try 20 times and immediately get it. You might try 30 times, it might take a lot of patience, and you might get it on your first try, so keep that in mind, but best of luck to you getting to spawn in your favorite area, and in most of these cases it might be easier to run there or get yourself a flyer in an easy zone and fly up there. But if you really want to have that experience of starting in the floating islands, then by all means, if you kill yourself enough times, you will get there. Now, you can also save yourself some time if you use the admin commands if you're playing single player. You can just hit the tab key, type FLY for fly, and that'll let you fly up into the air, and you can head up to one of those islands, which you could spawn into if you get lucky enough, and then just type walk in the admin commands, which will make you start walking again. So if you are not a patient person and you don't mind using an admin command to save yourself some time, that's also a good solution. Well, that is every single starting zone in the Crystal Isles map as it is right now. Now, it's possible they could change things up and add a couple starting zones. They've done that before with Genesis, and I wouldn't be too surprised if they allowed us to actually spawn in the floating islands or the jungle later on, because a couple of those starting zones were kind of throwaway spawn points anyway. But I'll definitely give you guys an update if that does get changed in a later patch. So I really hope this starting zone guide was helpful for you guys, and that you'll have a really great start to your Crystal Isles adventures because of it. If so, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. That really helps us and helps them out a lot. Also, drop a comment and let me know if you guys know of any good starting base locations that are nearby any of these starting zones. I'd love to share some great base locations with my new official Crystal Isles map, Best Base Locations Guide, which I will be working on very soon. I'm also looking for really easy metal and obsidian locations, so please drop a comment if you've got some good coordinates for any of those resources. And be sure to subscribe to this channel and ring the bell to enable all notifications, because we have so much helpful Crystal Isles content coming your way, and there's going to be so many things that will help you in your Crystal Isles adventures. You won't want to miss any of that. So until next time, which will be really soon, I hope you guys have a great time exploring the Crystal Isles, and we will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching this video from the Ark Survival Guide. If you enjoyed it or found it helpful, please give it a thumbs up and share it on social media. That helps us so much. Be sure to subscribe to this channel and ring the bell to enable all notifications because we have lots of awesome new ARK videos and live streams coming soon, and you won't want to miss any of them. You can do so many awesome things in ARK, but it is really hard to figure out on your own. Check out the links at the end of this video to browse our huge library of fun, clean, and helpful ARK guides, tips, tricks, live streams, and Let's Plays. If you would like to earn awesome rewards while supporting this channel, click the join button or link next to the subscribe button to learn more about our new channel memberships. You can also join our awesome Discord community at the link in the description of this video or on top of the channel homepage. And if you want to see my wife and I play lots of other fun video games together, visit our other YouTube channel, The Console Co-op Couple, using the link in the video description or in the channel homepage. And now I want to give a shout out to some of the biggest supporters of this channel. Sabo0283, Cole Parmenter, Wolfgirl Be Like, Austin Nagel, Kelly Razak, Black Silver Ride, and Emmy Fisher. You guys are all awesome and we so appreciate your support. Now if you'd like to be a monthly supporter and get a shout out at the end of our videos, check out the join button next to the subscribe button for more information about that. And for everyone else, thanks so much for watching and we will see you in the next video.